The stage lights blazed, washing the Kelly Clarkson Show in gold. The audience crackled with excitement, their cheers building as Kelly, all warmth and Texas charm, introduced her next guest, Jennifer Lopez. The crowd erupted. Jennifer glided onto the stage in a sequined dress that caught every light, her smile dazzling, her stride confident. She settled into her chair with practiced ease, body relaxed, eyes razor-sharp. At first, it was smooth. Kelly asked about Jennifer's latest projects, her music, her films. Jennifer's laugh filled the air as she told a story about a rehearsal gone wrong, the audience eating it up. But beneath the easy flow, a current of tension stirred. Kelly's questions shifted, from light to pointed, from playful to probing. She asked about public scrutiny, high-profile relationships, the toll of fame. Jennifer's smile faltered, just slightly, though she deflected with grace. Then Kelly leaned in. A wellness brand, online backlash, accusations of being out of touch with her fans. Jennifer's eyes narrowed, though her voice stayed even, insisting her brand was about empowerment, not profit. The audience clapped. Kelly pressed harder. The air thickened. Jennifer shifted in her chair, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. When Kelly pushed again, about perfection, pressure, and regret, Jennifer froze. Her gaze locked onto Kelly's. The warmth vanished. Her voice dropped, calm, controlled. I don't believe in regrets, only lessons. The words landed like a warning. Kelly tried to pivot, tossing a lighter question. But the room had changed. Jennifer's answers grew clipped, her smile strained. The audience clapped on cue, but the energy felt hollow. Finally, when asked to share a fun story from her latest movie, Jennifer leaned back, arms crossed. I'd rather talk about something real, the audience murmured. Kelly laughed, too quickly, too sharp, trying to steer back to safe ground. Jennifer wasn't playing. She stood, deliberate, cold. I need a moment, the crowd gasped as she walked off stage, heels echoing like gunfire. Kelly called after her, half apology, half desperation. But Jennifer didn't turn back. The set froze. Then, cut to commercial. Backstage, Jennifer stormed through the corridors, her team trailing in a flurry of whispers. Her jaw was set, her eyes unblinking, fury held tight beneath a polished exterior. In her dressing room, she leaned against the vanity, gripping its edge. The mirror stared back at her. Not a star, not an icon, just a woman who'd been pushed too far. On set, Kelly sat rigid, smile gone, hands clasped in her lap as the audience buzzed with shock. The stage manager barked into headsets, scrambling to reset. Kelly forced a laugh, told the crowd that live TV is unpredictable, but her eyes flicked toward the wings, betraying her nerves. In the control room, panic reigned. Producers replayed the footage, dissecting every glance, every pause. Do they cut the segment or spin it for ratings? Either way, Twitter was already on fire. Jennifer's phone lit up in her dressing room with texts from her team, her publicist, her friends. She ignored them. Pacing, she replayed Kelly's words in her head. The edge, the betrayal. They weren't just questions. They were cuts, disguised as banter. She stopped pacing, stared at a framed photo of herself on stage, sweat-drenched and fearless. Her jaw tightened. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Meanwhile, Kelly huddled in a corner with her producer. The producer's voice was sharp, urgent. Why push so hard? Kelly's face softened. Regret flickered. I didn't mean to cross a line. I thought we were just being real. Two women, tough conversation. But even to her own ears, it sounded thin. The producer's reply was grim. Focus on the next. Segment. Keep it light. The audience shifted in their seats as the band played them into a forced intermission. But the energy in the room wasn't light. It was heavy, expectant. Everyone knew they had just witnessed a fracture that wouldn't be easily smoothed over. Phones lit up across the studio like fireflies. Fingers flew over screens, posts multiplying by the second. Some whispered that it had to be staged, a publicity stunt. But those closest to the stage had seen Jennifer's eyes, flinty, unguarded. That hadn't been performance. That had been real. The break clock wound down. A decision loomed. Would Jennifer walk back out, or was this interview dead? The lights flared. The audience hushed. Kelly Clarkson reappeared in her chair, her smile bright but brittle. She filled the silence with a breezy monologue, blaming technical difficulties, before pivoting into the next segment, a cooking demo with a celebrity chef. The audience clapped on cue, but their energy was fractured. Their eyes kept darting toward the empty guest chair, a glaring reminder of what had just happened. Backstage, Jennifer stood in her dressing room, surrounded by her team's overlapping voices. Her publicist pushed hard. Go back out. Smooth. It over. Smile, crack a joke. Right now, the optics are spiraling. Social media was detonating in real time. Clips of the walk-off were trending. Fans were dividing into camps, some blasting Kelly, others calling Jennifer unprofessional. Jennifer scrolled through her phone, her face unreadable. Then she set it down. I need a minute. Alone. Reluctantly, her team filed out, leaving her in silence, the muffled hum of the studio bleeding through the walls. In the control room, chaos. Some producers argued to cut the segment entirely, bury it with pre-taped footage. The executive producer shut it down. It's already viral. Cutting it makes it worse. We need her back out there. Or something from her team. But Jennifer wasn't ready to talk. The show limped forward. Kelly bantered with the chef, tossing out jokes about burning toast, her voice warm but hollow. The audience smiled politely, but their applause was thin. Kelly's eyes flicked, again and again, to that empty chair. Off-stage, whispers spread like wildfire. Some crew swore they saw Jennifer's team near the exit. Others insisted she was still inside. No one knew which rumor was true. In her dressing room, Jennifer sat rigid on the couch, hands clasped in her lap. She'd weathered plenty of storms, but this felt different. Kelly hadn't just asked hard questions. She'd crossed into wounds. Jennifer had spent years closing. Part of her wanted to march back out, take control of the narrative. But another part whispered that she didn't owe anyone that performance. Not this time. She stood, smoothed her dress and stared at the door. Outside, her team waited. The show waited. The world waited. But for what? An apology? A carefully staged smile? She wasn't sure. On stage, Kelly wrapped the cooking demo with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. As the audience clapped, the stage manager called for another break. Kelly slipped off stage, shoulders sagging, walking straight to her dressing room. Crew avoided her gaze. For the first time, she felt the weight of what had cracked open. She dropped into a chair, rubbing her temples. Her assistant hovered with water. Kelly waved it away. On the wall monitor, she watched the restless audience. They weren't talking about recipes or celebrity chefs. They were talking about Jennifer, about her, about the walk-off. The guilt hit in waves, followed quickly by frustration. She hadn't meant to push so far. The questions had felt honest in the moment, necessary, real. Now they felt like a line crossed, a mistake she couldn't edit out. Outside, the hall buzzed with frantic voices. Jennifer's team still hadn't left the building. The executive producer cornered Kelly's manager. We need a plan. Is Kelly addressing this on air or not? The manager stalled. Kelly wasn't ready. In her own room, Kelly replayed the moment Jennifer's eyes had gone cold, the way she'd stood, unflinching, and walked away. It wasn't just the interview. It was two women, battle-tested, successful, scarred by the same brutal industry, colliding head-on. Meanwhile, Jennifer stood by her dressing room window, arms crossed. Her publicist re-entered, urging her again. This is your chance. Take the stage back. Control the narrative. Jennifer shook her head slowly. Her voice was calm, steady. I'm not going back out there to play nice. Not after that. The choice was made. Jennifer stared at the screen, her publicist's words glowing back at her. A stand for authenticity. The phrase felt manufactured, hollow. Yet she knew the headlines were already writing themselves. If she didn't shape the story, someone else would. She typed a few words, erased them, then locked the phone. For now, silence felt stronger than spin. In the studio, Kelly's show trudged on, but the energy was fractured beyond repair. Games, with the audience felt forced, laughter breaking awkwardly against the undercurrent of what everyone really wanted to talk about. Every time Kelly's smile faltered, cameras caught it. Every time she paused too long, Twitter clipped it. Backstage, the executive producer paced, headset tight, barking orders no one could follow fast enough. We need to own this. End strong. Kelly closes with grace, no matter what. But the crew knew the truth. The show was no longer theirs. It belonged to the feeds, the comments, the millions dissecting every frame in real time. Kelly returned to her dressing room between breaks, the roar of applause muffled by the heavy door. She finally let the mask slip, her hands trembling as she reached for a water bottle. She thought about Jennifer again. Not the superstar, but the woman she'd once traded jokes with at after-parties. The one who had texted her late at night about being tired of smiling for everyone. And she hated herself for turning that private confession into a public dagger. Jennifer, meanwhile, sat quietly in the back seat of her car, the city lights flickering across her face. Her driver asked where to. She hesitated, then whispered, "Home." The word felt like both sanctuary and exile. She leaned back, eyes closed, letting the hum of the road drown out the storm she knew awaited her phone. On the lot, a TMZ van screeched to a halt, cameras already spilling out. Someone had tipped them off. Jennifer's car slipped past just in time, tinted windows shielding her. But the grainy footage of her leaving alone would soon loop endlessly across social platforms. Inside the studio, the final break loomed. The hot control room handed Kelly the pre-written statement. She read it silently, her lips tightening at its sterility. Respect her space, wish her well. It sounded safe, corporate, nothing like the truth burning in her chest. When the cameras came back on, she smiled, thanked the audience, and delivered the line exactly as written. Polished. Empty. The audience clapped, but it was a tired sound. The lights dimmed. The credits rolled. Only then, as the cameras cut, did. Kelly let the paper slip from her hand. She sank into her chair, exhaling hard, her voice breaking into a whisper no one could hear. What have I done? And across the city, Jennifer stepped out of her car into the quiet of her gated driveway. The world was still buzzing, hashtags multiplying, networks calling it the walk-off heard around daytime TV. She paused at her door, her phone vibrating with another flood of notifications. She didn't look. She just stood there in the dark, holding her breath, knowing tomorrow would be louder than tonight. Jennifer didn't respond. She leaned back, closing her eyes, letting the city's rhythm steady her pulse. She knew the fallout would be brutal, the headlines, the think pieces, the memes. But she also knew her truth. The years of scrutiny she'd endured, the strength it had taken to keep moving. She wasn't sorry for leaving, but she wasn't at peace either. The confrontation had cracked something open, a fracture in the polished armor she'd worn for decades, and she didn't yet know what would come. Next, on set, Kelly wrapped the game segment, her energy draining as the show edged toward its end. The audience clapped, but their applause was thin, distracted. The earlier drama overshadowed every smile, every joke, hanging in the air like smoke. When the cameras cut to a final break, Kelly lingered at center stage, scanning the crowd as if searching for something she couldn't name. The show had to end, but the story didn't. Not with Jennifer gone and the world watching. The studio lights dimmed as the Kelly Clarkson Show moved into its close. Kelly stood in the spotlight, hands clasped, her voice steady but softer than usual. She thanked the audience, the guests, the crew. Words polished but heavy with subtext. Then, after a beat, she added, "Sometimes conversations get real, and that's what makes them human." It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't nothing. The audience clapped politely, subdued, as if acknowledging both the performance and the wound beneath it. Kelly signed off with her signature smile, then walked off stage without looking back, her shoulders carrying a weight the cameras hadn't caught before. In the control room, the producers finally exhaled. The show was over, but the war wasn't. The executive producer leaned back, already bracing for calls from the network. Ratings were through the roof, but the cost was still being calculated. Social media was a battlefield. Clips dissected, hashtags multiplying, the confrontation transforming into a referendum on fame, authenticity, and power. Jennifer's car pulled into her hotel's underground garage. She slipped past paparazzi, flashes, her expression unreadable. Inside her suite, she kicked off her heels and sank into the couch, the silence deafening after the chaos of the studio. Her phone was a minefield of notifications, but she opened only one message, from her sister, a simple check-in. It made her exhale, though she didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, she poured a glass of water, staring out the window at the city, lights as the confrontation replayed in her mind. Not just Kelly's pointed questions, but the years of scrutiny they had unearthed. She knew the walk-off would define her for weeks, maybe longer, but it was also a line in the sand, a refusal to perform when the cost became too high. Across town, Kelly packed her bag in silence while her team buzzed around, already planning the next day's show. She barely heard them. All she could think of was the look in Jennifer's eyes before she walked away. Hurt, defiant, final. Kelly wanted to reach out, to explain, but the moment was already too big, swallowed whole by the public gaze. She left the studio, the night air cool on her skin, the drive home quiet, except for the questions looping in her head. What could she say to make it right? And would she ever get the chance? The world didn't stop turning. By morning, the confrontation was headline news, dissected on talk shows, debated on podcasts, replayed on every feed. Some praised Jennifer for standing her ground. Others called it unprofessional. Kelly's supporters lauded her honesty, while critics accused her of ambush. But beyond the noise, the story was simpler. Two women navigating a world that demanded perfection, their vulnerabilities exposed in a moment neither could take back. The studio would host new guests, new segments, new laughs. But the echo of that day lingered. A reminder of the cost of being real in a spotlight that never dims. And somewhere, in their separate corners of the world, Jennifer and Kelly carried on, each grappling with the fallout in their own way. The cameras weren't rolling anymore, but the story wasn't over. Not for them. Not for the millions still watching, waiting for what came next.